All right, so I asked this question. Of the 4 teams that are about to change conferences after this season, USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Texas, in your opinion, and then we'll get Paul and Craig and my opinion on it as well, who's probably more prepared as they're about a year out from being a part of that? And some of the responses, I'm just going to rattle them off. From CFP Plus, Texas, USC, Oklahoma, UCLA. From Paxton, Texas, USC, Oklahoma, UCLA. From Kim, USC, Texas, Oklahoma, and UCLA. From Clint, USC, Texas, Oklahoma, UCLA. From Kyle, USC, Texas, Oklahoma, UCLA. And on. There's more. Dennis, Texas, Oklahoma, USC, and UCLA. Those are just some of the responses, but you kind of see a trend right there.
At number 4, yes.
At 4, the trend is at UCLA. The other ones are somewhat scattered. Oklahoma mainly 2 and 3, mainly 3, and then Texas and USC probably the ones splitting most of number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, I think USC to me is number 1 because they have the most successful and best coach right now. I'm not knocking the other guys, but like Lincoln Riley's done it, and he is, arguably. I'm just gonna say right now he's the best recruiter out of all the bunch. That's a cyclical thing. Sometimes that can change, but right now he's hot on that, and that team's gonna be loaded for bear. They, the alumni treat them like rock stars in LA. It's a unique place to play. There's all those cool things about USC that when things are going right, there's hardly cooler places to play than USC. I think, based on the roster right now and the way that the roster is building, we know more about Texas than Oklahoma going into the SEC. But, again, they're going to have to prove it. Oklahoma's got this whole big reshuffle because their coach is now at Oklahoma, the guy that they were planning on going to the SEC with. So Brent Venables is going to have to figure that out. And then, no knock on Chip Kelly and UCLA, but they just had their first really good year in a very, very long time.
But could that not mean that maybe after a while he's kind of turned the corner?
I hope. I mean, for their sake, I hope so. But at the end of it, though, UCLA, you got to show us again and again and again that you're ready to consistently be there, as opposed to, they still have not won a conference championship since the late 90s.
Yeah, and here's an actual duck, and then Craig, you go. Chip Kelly at least coached in a title game. He was at Oregon when he coached in a title game. It's been a while, but an actual duck on the chat room. Thanks for your feedback.
Yeah, I think Paul actually just helped me switch out what was going to be my 1 and 2. I'm going to go USC at number 1. I think I was going to go Texas initially, but because of a lot of the reasons that he mentioned, they're unique. I know UCLA is coming with them, but they are the big brand in L.A. They've got a coach who's been there, done that a lot of times. He hasn't won a natty yet, but he's won basically everything else. He's had multiple Heisman winners, multiple number 1 overall picks. That's not going to change in Los Angeles. It's only going to continue with Malachi Nelson and all these other guys that they keep bringing in and will continue to bring in. So I think that because of the recruiting and the fact that I think with them jumping in the league, it'll be probably maybe a little bit of an uptick from what they're playing. It'll just depend on the schedule each year. Do you get Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, all of the big brands in one year, or do you get a couple of those a year? How does that work out? So I don't know how much the schedule will be better or worse, but I think that they'll be loaded. I think they'll be loaded with talent. He can coach. I know there's a step that he hasn't taken yet, but he's also a young guy still, too. We totally just act like Lincoln Riley's 65 years old sometimes, and he's not going to continue to grow and get better. And now I just feel like they're going to have even more at their disposal and can only get better from playing the likes of Ohio State and Michigan and having to compete with them on a regular basis. So, yeah, I think that their uniqueness in the Big Ten and their, current trajectory does lend me to feel good about them at the number 1 spot. I was going to say Texas initially, but I think USC's got more of a unique positioning in the Big Ten. And if you want to argue that the SEC is the biggest, the baddest, the toughest, and whatever, well, then shouldn't there be a little bit of a learning curve, you would think, no matter how loaded for bear you come walking into that thing if you're Texas or Oklahoma. But I do think I'd put Texas above OU. OU at 3, and then UCLA at 4. That's not a knock on UCLA. Somebody has to come into last place, and I'm just not going to put them above
and
a team fourth. That's played for multiple national titles over the last 2 decades in Oklahoma and has won bunches of conference titles. And I know that's all in the past, and that's not even with the coach they have now. And that's also what plays into me putting Oklahoma at 3. Sark's not a proven commodity either, but he's a little bit more proven than Brent Venables at this point. And I feel like they've got a little bit more momentum. Now, that could flip. Like, Jackson Arnold could turn out to be a star here in the next couple of years, and the next, whoever, and Brent Venables turns out to be the next Bob, Barry, Bud, and he's the 4th B in that grouping of historical OU coaches, but we haven't seen nearly enough to feel like that's a given.
It will be interesting to watch Oklahoma this year.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
So and with Chip, and if Chip was at Oklahoma or Texas, I'd have them at number 1 or number 2 probably, right? But the fact is at UCLA, they just aren't the level of brand that those other 3 are at the moment or historically. So that's why I put them at 4. But they've got a heck of a shot to juice up that program and make it better than it's been in a long time as well. But like I said, somebody's got to finish 4. So USC, Texas, OU, UCLA.
One of the things about UCLA that I do admire, and I don't know how long he's been there, Chip Kelly, but they have been patient. Not like there hasn't been like, hey, what the hell's going on? Don't think USC playing with Caleb Williams and what they're doing doesn't bring even more heat, because it does. It's like Michigan beating Ryan Day the last couple of years, and there's like people are like, man, he was the genius rock star, and all of a sudden, man, you better win this year. But he maybe it's turned the corner. Maybe like Jim Harbaugh, it's just taken not quite as long as it did Harbaugh, but it's taken a little bit of time. Roger the Dodger, USC NIL is growing. It's getting scary. I predict vast reserves. A couple other notes on Riley. Let's see here. Sandra Green, Riley not even out recruiting Oregon, doing by transfers like Dion. USC had a pretty good class. I don't know what their ranking was. I don't keep up with that as much. But, a lot of what USC got last year was what they had in the transfer portal. But they also got the quarterback from Oklahoma who had committed to play for Riley in Norman.
Who's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. It could very well be the one and only guy to ever join Archie Griffin this year, depending on how he goes. So, that, as we saw when he got hurt against Utah, made a bit of a difference. I don't think you can rely on Superman every single year, but he's more often than not going to have Superman playing quarterback for him. Look at the stats, look at the records, look at the Heismans. If that's all he's going to be able to do is not quite compete with Oregon in other areas, but he's going to get the best quarterback in the country, then he's going to go win a bunch of games with that guy. But I understand. Oregon's got a good thing going on. Utah's got a good thing going on. But as far as making that leap to the Big Ten or making that leap to the SEC, I do feel like USC can go in there with guns a-blazing, the L.A. market and Southern Cal behind them, and probably a great quarterback and go win some ball games.
The only time college football is hip, and Roger and others from the West Coast, is it true that the only time college football is hip in California is when USC is red hot with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, or in this case, Caleb Williams? Because it does seem like it's always the Lakers or the Dodgers. And just, again, I'm asking you, even the Rams winning the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Dennis Haiti, logistics are important. That USC and UCLA is talking about having an equipment facility in the Midwest to help with the issues that 4 to 5 Big Ten games will bring them. So they might have what would you call a bureau, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you don't want to have you don't want to have your 18-wheeler driving from LA and then have to, basically you're going to tell that guy to, live on the road like he's hauling diapers. You've got to, probably have more reasonable transport when it comes to that, because people may not know this, but when you go to get on a plane, you don't put all the shoulder pads and helmets and all that stuff on the plane with you. You put it on the
You start to,
truck,
and Craig, and then you respond. Dennis Haiti, though, the team may fly in style. Their equipment is another thing. Don't know about you, but those semis moving through urban traffic jams is another thing.
Yeah, but that's not going to affect the quarterback.
No.
He's going to be on the first class flight or the private plane from LA. I understand the travel issue that the LA teams are going to face. That's been a big subject, and I think it remains to be seen how much we can count that in. So that's why, it is something to bear in mind. But at the same time, I do think that, they can still come in and win some football games pretty quickly in the Big Ten. Now, are they going to knock down Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, all those teams plus more, right away? Maybe not, but I don't know that there's enough of a detriment because of the travel just yet. Like, I don't think we just know quite what an effect that's going to have. So with that in mind, I still give them the nod at number one. But we could see very quickly, like, that ends up being a thing that ends up hurting those schools. Certainly a lot of people are banking on that being a thing that hurts those schools. But I just feel like going on a private plane every other week, and it's 1 extra hour or 2 extra hours or however long, if they got to go to Rutgers, I don't know how many extra hours that is. So that's going to be different.
It's a 5-hour flight.
Okay, well, that's way different than what they've been doing. So, yeah, that'll be impactful, but would it be impactful enough to say that they can't be the most successful team? Not for me right now. Not right now.
All right, my 4, if you don't mind. I think right now, to me, it'd be hard to split USC and Texas, because there's the unknown still of Oklahoma, although they're an alpha. They are an alpha. Last year they were not. They were an ant.
They're arguably the number one on the list if you're talking alphas.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But they're a to be determined until we see what year 2 with Venables, just like Sarkisian, as each year has gone by, has slowly but surely, it seems like, tweaked what UT's doing. Under the circumstances of tradition, I would normally have said Oklahoma, if Lincoln Riley was still there, he's not. He's at USC. And I do believe that it's kind of like one of those runs that USC's about to make, like they did in the 70s, like they did in the 2000s, and I think they're about to be that. They got to fix the defense. That's another story. But I would say USC, because Riley recruits Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. Texas recruits all the time, no matter what. Now can they follow it up and get to that next level? And then I would say Oklahoma and UCLA could split hairs at 3 and 4 because I just want to see what Venables does in year 2 to see progress, and not just progress from a losing season to a bowl team. I want to see if they can get to the next level. Let's not forget the team right in front of them on my top 4 beat the living crap out of them 49-0, which Oklahoma's delivered a few of those along the way over the years, but that was just embarrassing.
Here's another thing I want to mention about USC and all the other things is that, look, Lincoln Riley built a team real fast because he had to, because he could, because he had Caleb Williams. If Caleb Williams had graduated and left Oklahoma, if he was already in the NFL,
or had not transferred.
And yeah, but I mean, if Lincoln Riley, if there's Caleb Williams, just not in the factor for anybody in the country. That's the easiest way I can work this out in my head. So if Lincoln Riley just goes there, he probably doesn't have this quick of a turnaround where he can build a roster this fast, but he brought the magnet with him in Caleb Williams, and people wanted to come and play with Caleb Williams. I give you Jordan Addison, first-round draft pick this year, who Blitnikoff winner who transfers to go play with Caleb Williams and make some NIL money. USC is going to be better to go. Here's the other thing about it, and this is what really sucks for the Pac-12 if this is one of their last goes at it. This is one of the best years coming up.
Yes.
It looks like the Pac-12 may have had in a long time. Top to bottom in their league, look, they have got – it's maybe the best quarterback league as we start the year right now, and they've got so many good teams in that league right now. I think that USC and UCLA will be a little bit more ready to head into the Big Ten, which actually may not be quite as good this year as the Pac-12 top to play it pound for pound.
Two of the 4 teams that are moving. 2 of the 4 teams that are moving. The NIL movement and transfer portal movement may have benefited not them more than anybody else, but I think that it came at just the right time for UT football with who they were and who they're trying to be, and obviously with USC with who they were and then what Lincoln Riley brought to the table.
Yeah, and I mean for everybody though, it's benefited Oklahoma. How are they going to flip the roster without it? I mean, just as much as they lost.
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that Texas, at just the right time, I think NIL and transfer portal came around for them because they were kind of like floundering. They were kind of like wandering, and it kind of has given them a little bit of a kickstart.
Yeah, I don't mean to just focus in on them, but you're right. Yeah, for them and USC, it's good timing. Texas is certainly benefiting already. You see that with just the kind of momentum that they've created and the facilities and all of that, and now landing the players they are. I mean, but like to me, that's why I kind of like balked a little bit, just because they were landing classes like that though already. Like they were already getting the Arch Mannings of the world a lot of the times. Now maybe not as much recently as they were, in the 2000s.
That offensive line from
now,
2 years ago.
No, I get what I'm not trying to like get down in the mud on the Texas part of it. I'm just saying that, like, they were, on the one hand, you're right, fortunate. It gave them a little bit of a bump though from what they were already getting. But yes, moving forward, they can definitely bring some big guns to the table. And so can USC, and I'm sure Oklahoma will follow suit. And the question will be, to what extent does UCLA, do that as well? How much does it change a program like that? Because we know the other three are going to be, balls to the wall with all of it. But, USC, I think, I made the comment a second ago, they would be above Oklahoma in the all-time rankings, but not by much, but they would be. And so, I think, it's a pretty heavy dose of teams moving, those four. Just looking at them historically, even present day, the things that they could, help change for these conferences they're joining. It's going to be fascinating. The whole thing, every single one of those teams, and how they transition and how they use NIL, and who climbs over the other, or who flails, who isn't as good. I mean, that's going to be ridiculously entertaining to watch here these next few years.
Sandra, UT hasn't done much portal, more high school. I think most everybody except perhaps Dion and one or two for now. But UT, Nayor, the running back from Alabama, the wide receiver from Alabama, the tight end from Alabama, the I'm missing
Donnie Mitchell, the wide receiver from Georgia. Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers is a transfer, so they and good for them.
Defensive tackle for Minnesota.
Good for them. Yeah, but they have more than
Ryan Watts from Ohio State's their starting corner. But again, everybody's doing it. So,
but everyone is. But just to kind of there've been more than but more high school. Most everybody is more high school, other than maybe a handful of teams.
I do think though that there are fans out there that want to believe that their coaches are going more high school than portal because that means they're developing it. No, the new way of the world is both. I mean, it's both. So you don't have to be embarrassed if you go into the portal, because Nick Saban's doing it. If Nick Saban's doing it, it's cool, guys. You don't have to worry about it.
He started the spread after he realized everybody else was doing it and he couldn't beat it. Not that he couldn't beat it, but you get the point. Now that they are. Paxton, 4 true freshmen, started on the offensive line. Yeah. And that's when the NIL thing popped just in time. And good for them. Again, that's great. But just because 4 freshmen started on the offensive line doesn't mean it's all high school, because we just rattled off 7 to 8, 9 different transfers.
By the way, those 4 freshmen on the offensive line that John Thunlaw that we talked about yesterday is made specifically to target groups like that went for them. That's a 501c3.
I was going to say, is that the same offensive line that got the deal of $50,000 by signing up? Yeah, so that's NIL related. Yeah. So, I get what you're saying. It's not a bad thing, though. It's not like if you get more players from NIL than you do high school, fine. If you get more high school than you do NIL, fine. NIL is going to be in play either way, high school, transfer, whatever. But, I think it's not if you get more transfers and it gets you to wins, then who cares where they came from, quite frankly. All it is about acquiring talent, no matter when you get them, as true freshmen or as fifth-year seniors. You just want talent, and they've accumulated a lot, and that's why they feel so good about this year. USC and Oklahoma and UCLA will have their fair share as well, but they're definitely some interesting times ahead of us for all 4 of those schools I said a few moments ago.
All right, it's 3:50.